Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elena. You should subscribe down below if you like videos related to fashion, reading, or just random little vlogs. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing all the books I read this year of 2023. They're all right here. There are 16 books here. 16th book at the bottom here I'm almost done with, but I'm going to include it in this video. Now, I don't really have a goal for next year in regard to how many books I want to read. I do think there's a big issue of book overconsumption, whether it is in regard to buying books but also reading books. I think consuming that much reading in a certain period of time is, I wouldn't say normal, but I wouldn't say necessarily good. I feel like you're not really absorbing what you're reading. You're kind of just reading to hit a certain mark. So the very first one is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. I also, really quick, just love her book covers. Something about the colors and just the characters on the front. It's just, I don't know, they're just a little bit more enticing. This centers around Harriet and Wynne. They have been together since college, but just a few months ago, they broke up. They have not told their close group of friends that they also met in college. And every year they go on this little summer trip to Maine because one of the friends, their dad owns a summer house there. But this year is the last year they'll be able to do it because the dad is selling the house. And Harriet thinks she's going on this trip and Wynne has decided not to, but what she doesn't know is that she's going to show up and Wynne is actually there. And this throws Harriet for a loop. She's not sure what to do. They're both kind of unsure what to do because none of the friends know, so they have to act like that they're still together. It starts with friends to lovers, and I wouldn't say it goes to enemies. It's just that they break up, but there is a lot of tension and anger during this trip, and then it goes back to love again. It's almost like a second chance at love, and a lot of it is due to forced proximity. They're on this trip together with their friends. They have to hide that they're not together anymore because they don't want to upset their other friends. One of the other friends, they just got engaged and they don't want to ruin their last summer at this house in Maine. The book, along with all of the other books by Emily Henry I've read, are typically very entertaining and they're really easy reads. The storyline and the second chance at love that these two characters get, there's a lot more meaning to it compared to the other 3 books I read by her. I loved the dynamic between all the friends and some of the secrets the other friends have that kind of play into some of the tension going on during this trip. There's not just tension between Harriet and Wynne. The next book is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I also rated this one 5 out of 5 stars. This is Jeanette's autobiography on her childhood and her teenhood, and actually it's kind of just on her whole life up until the present day, all about being a child and teen actress. Very interesting. It's very sad. Trigger warnings in regard to child abuse. If you're unsure who Jeanette McCurdy is, she, again, child and teen actress. What she's best known for is playing the best friend Sam in the Nickelodeon show iCarly, which starred Miranda Cosgrove. In this book, she discusses what it was like growing up as a child actress and a teen actress and essentially supporting her family through that way and being manipulated and abused by her mom, and also some other abuse going on with other people involved, and also abuse at the hands of the producer. That is the code name she uses for Dan Schneider, the producer of Nickelodeon. It was very mind-blowing what she went through. I did not know the extent of the abuse she endured. It was very raw and real what she was talking about, and she wrote it very eloquently. What was interesting about the book is, for example, she would discuss something that was happening while filming one of the episodes of iCarly. And it's so interesting to go find that episode on YouTube and go to that specific scene and watch it now as you're older and remember watching it when you're younger and not realizing what was happening literally at that moment to her, and now to be older and to watch it and just like your heart just breaks for her. It really does give an inside look into the abuse and harm and neglect that child stars go through. The next book is The Boys of 67. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. Now this is by Andrew Weiss and it centers around the Charlie Company during their time in the war in Vietnam. Charlie Company was, I believe, part of the 9th Infantry Division. This was when it was reactivated for the Vietnam War. I'm glad I found this book and decided to read it. I think it was a very important read for not just myself but for anyone to read. It accounts the story of the Charlie Company during the Vietnam War. Now the Charlie Company, except for one person, was made up of all draftees, and it just recounts their time during Vietnam, what happened to each of them, whether they lived or they ended up dying. I think it's even more sad with this book because it shows pictures of all of them. So you read, you know, one of the chapters and 3 guys just traumatically died. And then you go to the pictures and you see which ones are which. Very quickly into going over there, a lot of them said in the book, we started questioning very early on, why are we even here? Like, what are we actually even fighting for? The next book that I read this year is The Babysitter by Liza Rodman and also Jennifer Jordan. And I rated this 4 to 5 stars. Liza Rodman, who's pictured when she was younger at the bottom here. This is an account of her summer with a serial killer who is Tony Costa up here. I believe he was nicknamed the Cape Cod Vampire. He was the handyman at one of the hotels that her mom first started working at. Often her mom would get jobs during the summer at the Cape, and one of the first ones she got was at this hotel where he was the handyman at. Her mom would have her and her sister just go off with the handyman, or Tony Costa, and he would like bring them on his errands. He didn't even really know this guy, clearly, because he ended up being a serial killer. And oftentimes when he would take the 2 young girls with him to run errands or go, you know, dump garbage or whatever, he ended up taking them to the scene of the crimes that he committed, to some of the areas that he dumped some of his victims' bodies at. Her and her sister had absolutely no idea. She didn't even know about what he had done until she was much older and an adult. It was interesting to read about her time with him and also get insight into what he did, but then it would go back to some of the abuse that she endured at the hands of her mother in her own childhood. Really loved how she highlighted his victims and really went into depth and told their story. I feel like other times in true crime books, podcasts, documentaries, they don't really go in depth or talk about the victims and memorialize them. They really focus on the serial killer or the criminal at hand, and they like sensationalize them, and she did not do that, which I really appreciate. The next one is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I actually have 2 books by Christina Lauren, and this one I liked way better than the other one I'm going to mention. I rated this one a 4 out of 5. So this book is centered around 2 people, enemies, 2 lovers, and they are Olive and Ethan. Olive is the twin sister of the bride who is getting married, and she's her maid of honor, and then Ethan is the best man / best friend of the groom who is marrying Olive's twin sister. Olive and Ethan don't end up eating certain dish that is given to the wedding party and guests at the wedding, at the reception, and everyone else gets sick but them because they didn't eat it. And essentially the sister is always like very lucky. Like the twin sister is always very lucky. She wins contests, she's popular, this and that. The honeymoon was actually an all paid like resort honeymoon in Hawaii that the sister won, so it was non-refundable. They had to go on the trip or it would have been lost. So the twin sister suggests that because Olive and Ethan aren't sick, that they just go together so that it's worth her winning the contest. So it's forced proximity, and they are forced to be in the same hotel room together on this week-long romantic honeymoon in Hawaii, because it's not their honeymoon. They can't even stand each other. The reason they don't like each other is due to a miscommunication. It's due to the first time they met each other, she overheard something he said and misconstrued it. I just thought it was simply entertaining, and it was a sweet little romance. There's nothing deep about it, and I think the 2 books I read by Christina Lauren are just that. They're just entertaining, kind of like Emily Henry books. The one thing about this and the other book I've read is I feel like towards the end of the book, they start to rush the romance and try to get to the ending very quickly. And it starts kind of getting corny in like the scenarios and the wording. This one, not as bad as the other one I'm going to mention, but overall, I did like this book and I would reread it again. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I rated this 3 out of 5. I have read Daisy Jones and the Sixth by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I loved that. This one I didn't like as much. The writing is slightly an interview format, but it's not as much as Daisy Jones and the Sixth was, and I really liked that. There is a twist in this book of someone that she ended up being secretly in love with, but you kind of see it coming early on. Fairly engaging for, you know, the most part. I think the hype around it was a bit overrated though. The book just goes over the fictional famous Hollywood star and actress Evelyn Hugo and her 7 ex-husbands and her whole career. I felt like it could have been more entertaining. I don't know what could have been changed to make it, but I just think maybe at the end of the day, it wasn't really my cup of tea. I'm going to lump the next 2 books together. It Ends With Us sequel It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you can't tell from my face, I am not a fan of Colleen Hoover's. Both of these, I give it a 0 out of 5. So it centers around an abusive and toxic relationship, and then in the second book, it's a second chance at love, but it's not with the abuser in the first book. Writing can be very cringy. It really does remind me of like a Wattpad story from 2014 written by a 17-year-old. And in this one, she tries not to do that, but it doesn't end up working out. I think there are bits and pieces of where it really seems like she romanticizes the abuser in this book. I also don't think she's meant to be a fictional romance writer. I think that is the totally wrong genre for her. So those will be donated soon, and God bless whoever reads them next. Next, we have Family of Liars by E. Lockhart. This is 5 stars. This is a prequel to the book We Were Liars. We Were Liars, if you're gonna read these two books, you need to read We Were Liars first and then this. This is the prequel, and it goes back in time by like 30 years, so it's going to give a lot away if you read this first before We Were Liars. So it follows the Sinclairs and their summer on Martha's Vineyard in their summer house. They're a very rich family, they're a very privileged family, but they have a lot of secrets and drama and tension with one another. I was very fascinated between the tension between the sisters and seeing what unfolds in this story, and then thinking about how they act with one another in We Were Liars as adults and mothers. It's just, you start to add the pieces together of how their relationship ended up evolving in We Were Liars and how that all came about because of what happened in Family of Liars. The writing and storyline to me is just perfection. The next book is by Vendela Vita, and it's We Run the Tides. I actually picked up this book on my own. I had not heard about it prior in like a video or as a recommendation. This one I give a 4 out of 5 stars, and the writing is so engaging. It is set in the early 80s in San Francisco and centers around 2 friends, Willoughby and Maria. I think they're about like 12 or 13 in this book, and it's very much coming of age. Maria is just like this perfect person. Everyone loves her. She can do no wrong. She gets attention wherever she goes. Not a very good person. There is a certain event that changes the course of their friendship, and I think this event really puts into perspective how Maria is not a good person, and it really discourages Willoughby from continuing their friendship. I just thought it was really fascinating in general and just a really good read. The next book is by Sarah Addison Allen, and this is Other Birds. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, but off the bat, I love Sarah Addison Allen. If you like the movie Practical Magic, or if you've read those books, I think you'll definitely like her books too. It's fictional romance with hints of magic in it. It's not one of my top favorites by her, but I still loved it and would definitely reread it and recommend it. One of the main characters in this book moves to South Carolina to go to college, and she actually ends up living in her mother's old apartment, and essentially her mother and father were separated from when she was very young. There's a lot of secrets surrounding her mother's life that she never knew about that start to unfold when she is living in her old apartment. And her mother is deceased, so she feels as moving into her apartment will bring her closer to her. She starts not only uncovering truths about her mother's past, but also finding more about her new neighbors around her and their own secrets and personal struggles as well. Girl Child, and this is by Tupelo Hassman, and I would give this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love and cherish this book, and it's essentially the story of a young girl, and it goes from when she's about, I don't know, I think when she's in like 1st grade to up to when she's about 16, and just her childhood and teenhood, growing up poor, living in a trailer park outside of Las Vegas. It goes over the neglect and abuse she endured at the hands of her mother and at the hands of other people. I think what makes the book very engaging is how the author depicts what's going on in the character's life. So for example, at a very young age, the main character endured sexual abuse at the hands of someone who babysat her in the trailer park. In one of the chapters, it's recounting that, but it's almost like it's being told from her 6 or 7-year-old mind. Every single sentence of the 2 pages of this chapter are blacked out except for like 2 sentences. To me, that represents in a poetic way what her mind is trying to make sense of what's going on to her and around her. The next book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I rated this a 1 out of 5. So this one tells the story of a young woman who has a twin sister down south, and essentially it just goes over how she, the main character, breaks up her engagement, how she drives down south because her sister like sends her a call that she's in trouble, and then she shows up and her sister is missing and essentially abandoned her daughter, aka the main character's niece. And there's another character in the books, Knox, who can't stand the sister And so when he meets the twin sister, the other main character, he just off the bat can't stand her too, just because she's the sister of this person, even though she has nothing to do with the actions of her sister. Enemies to lovers, and along the lines of Grumpy Sunshine, where she's more the sunshine and Knox, who's the other main character, is more grumpy. But it just goes way too overboard with how grumpy he is. He's very aggressive, and it's just all for no reason. And this book is also very long. The story doesn't have to be stretched out this much. It could definitely be way shorter. It could definitely be summed up in 300 or so pages, not well over 500. And I just think the style of writing and the storyline and just how the characters are represented and how they act just wasn't engaging for me. It kind of discouraged me from reading other books by Lucy Score. The next book is by Christina Lauren, another book by them, because it's actually two different people. They just put their first names together, but it is The Soulmate Equation. Cover of it is pretty interesting though. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. It wasn't my favorite by Christina Lauren, but I do still like other books I've read by them. The fictional romance about a guy who essentially has this company that matches your DNA to find your soulmate. So follows this young single mom. It ends up being that their DNA matches and equates them to being soulmates. And the first half was fairly good, but towards the second half I was getting bored. I wasn't interested, and I think like the pace and everything kind of changed. I feel like they kind of tried wrapping things up quickly in this book too, and I really didn't warm up to the main characters like I did in their other book, The Honeymooners. We have 2 more books left, and the second to last one is What's Mine and Yours by Naima Coster. This one I did give a 4 out of 5, and it essentially follows 2 students in North Carolina who attend the same school because the county decided that one of the schools that one of the characters was enrolled in should be integrated with this much larger school. So it follows their love story and them growing up from teenagers to adults and the eventual collapse of their marriage. It goes over a lot of racial tensions in the town, and it was very fascinating with all the characters. I think it had a lot of strong personalities in it, which made it even more interesting to read about. I felt like the storyline and the characters' romance had a lot more depth and meaning compared to other fictional romances I've read. The last book is Natalie Wood, The Complete Biography by Suzanne Feinstadt, and I rate this one a 4 out of 5. I'm almost done with it. It is 484 pages and I'm on page 436, so I am almost there. So if you've never heard of Natalie Wood, I would argue she is one of the most famous American actresses of all time. She started acting around the age of 5. She was forced into it by her abusive and manipulative mother. She acted all the way up until her death. When she died, she was in the middle of filming a movie called Brainstorm with Christopher Walken. Sometimes biographies are harder to read than like fictional books, and this one I started reading in September and it's December 17th. Some books require different pace of reading, and that's fine. I've actually enjoyed reading even though it's taken me a while. It was very fascinating, kind of like the Jeanette McCurdy autobiography, where the author talked about some things that Natalie Wood was going through while filming this movie, and that I think I love that movie, and yet she was so depressed and upset with her life, and so many horrible things were happening to her or happened to her up until that point. It essentially tells her whole life story up until her mysterious death. So she did drown, but it's mysterious because a lot of people speculate that her widow, Robert Wagner, had something to do with it. She was afraid of water and dark water. She like never went swimming. She never took the dinghy of the boat that they owned out on her own. It was like a huge fight that had happened that night, so it's very mysterious. That is the end of this video. Those are all 16 books I read this year, and I hope to catch you in my next video, and definitely check out my last few videos as well and subscribe. Bye.